Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome all of you who've joined us tonight online, as well as those who will view this recording following the meeting, to the North Carolina Department of Transportation's design public hearing for the proposed Corridor K improvements between Robbinsville and Stocoa, which is also known as State Transportation Improvement Program, project number A0009C. Due to COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, this hearing is being enhanced using virtual outreach. My name is Diane Wilson, and I'll be your moderator for tonight's public hearing. During this presentation, all incoming call microphones are going to be muted. If you're calling in, please mute your phone so we don't have to do that for you. If you will turn off your webcam and close other programs, it will provide a better viewing experience. If you wish to submit a comment or question tonight, please either use the chat box and note that you can locate the 2 in the chat box and select presenter, or you can select my name. Or you can call 984-205-6615, and when prompted, enter code 9893. Your message will be transcribed and sent to the presenters during the meeting. Now tonight we'll begin with the purpose of this virtual public hearing. I'll give you an overview of the project. We'll discuss and review the preferred alternative. We'll talk about the costs and impacts of the alternative. We'll review the right-of-way and relocation procedures and discuss next steps. We'll then take public comments, again, via the chat box or by calling 984-205-6615 and entering code 9893. So this meeting is another effort to make you, the public, a part of the project development process. Specifically tonight, we want to get your input on the environmental assessment and the preferred alternative being presented. When I speak about the environmental assessment, or EA, I'm speaking of the environmental document that's prepared for the project. It is federally required and outlines the purpose and need for the project. It identifies alternatives considered and evaluates them for potential environmental effects. The EA summarizes the direct and indirect impacts of the preferred alternative. The maps and the document have been and will continue to be on the NCDOT project website until project construction is complete. They have also been available and will continue to do so at the Division Engineer's office on Webster Road in Sylva, the District 14 office on Robbinsville Road in Andrews, and at the Graham County Maintenance Yard on Tallulah Road in Robbinsville. Your input is a vital component of the project development process, and you can participate and make your voice heard. Your input is extremely important in this process. Please note that all comments, regardless of method of submission, carry the same weight. It is our hope that providing you with multiple ways to participate in the process, you will submit comments in one of the following manners. You can have your comment recorded tonight by using the chat box during the public comment portion. You can also submit your comments through the mail, by email, through the project website, or by calling the 984 number, leaving a message, and having it sent to the project team. Now, the last page of the handout, which can be downloaded or requested by mail, is the comment form. You can fill it out after the meeting once you've taken in all of the project information and formulated your thoughts and ideas. You can then email or mail your comments to me. Again, you can call us on the hotline, as I mentioned earlier, the 984-205-6614 number, using that code 9893, or sharing your comments tonight. Two things that I want to make note of and make sure that everyone's clear on is that all comments carry the same weight. It doesn't matter if you put them in the chat box tonight, you email them, you mail them by U.S. Postal Service mail. Again, it doesn't matter. They all carry the same weight. Here's where you can submit the comments by mail. You can send them to me at this address in Raleigh. You can also visit the project website. You can email comments to robbinsville-stacoa@publicinput.com. And again, you can call that number that's on the screen. So you might be asking yourself, what are we going to do with this input? Well, after the virtual public hearing, there'll be a 30-day public comment period that will end on October 30th. NCDOT and the Federal Highway Administration will then meet with local officials and government agency staff to review public comments received before that October 30th date. Public feedback and local perspectives will be discussed with the project team. Then the team will also meet with the NEPA 404 merger team to present public comments and to receive their comments on the preferred alternative. The results of this coordination will be incorporated into a Finding of No Significant Impact, or FONSI, which is expected to be finalized in December of 2020. Now, final design will begin after the virtual public hearing. Additional coordination with regulatory and resource agencies and publication of that FONSI. The FONSI will include specific details for any items that were unresolved in the environmental assessment. As the proposed project advances and final designs are developed for the preferred alternative, additional design refinements will be evaluated to reduce the construction impacts of the project and to further minimize impacts overall. Right-of-way acquisition is anticipated to begin in September 21, while construction is expected to be phased in 3 sections beginning in August of 22. Now, it's important to bear in mind that the department cannot take just public comments into consideration in making these important decisions. We have to balance public comments with good sound engineering criteria, such as safety, which is our #1 goal. We look at impacts to the natural and human environments, operations, as well as cost. And basically, it's a balancing act that ensures that at the end of the day, we put the best product on the ground for the citizens of North Carolina. As I said before, the public comment period ends on October 30th. We accept comments throughout the design and construction phases. However, to make sure that your comments are received in this portion of the development of the project, we need those comments in hand by October 30th. The North Carolina Department of Transportation is studying improvements from Robbinsville to Stacoa in Graham County as part of a proposed project to provide the transportation infrastructure necessary for the well-being of local residents and regional traffic. This project is part of Corridor K of the Appalachian Development Highway System, known as the ADHS, a network of road corridors that Congress established in 1965 to provide a safe, efficient transportation system for the Appalachian region. Corridor K extends from Dillsboro in Jackson County, North Carolina, to I-75 in Cleveland, Tennessee. So let's talk about the why of the project. In transportation terms, that's known as the purpose and need of the project. This is the foundation of the project, and all alternatives that are evaluated must meet the purpose and need of the project, or they are eliminated from study. Roadways within the study area typically have steep grades and sharp curves. Roadways may have paved or unpaved shoulders of varying widths, or no shoulders at all. The roadway network in Graham County is limited with only 3 highways: US 129, NC 143, and NC 28. Grades often exceed 6% in mountainous areas, most notably near Stokoe Gap on NC 143, where the grade reaches 8%. The purpose and needs statement agreed to by the NEPA 404 merger team reads as follows. The project purpose is to provide the transportation infrastructure necessary for the well-being of local residents by improving mobility and reliability between the existing 4-lane section on NC 28 at Stokoe and US 129 in Robbinsville. The proposed project is an Appalachian Development Highway System project. This is a federal aid highway project and thus will be constructed under the state federal aid highway program. Financing for construction of this project will be 100% federal funds. This project is a state-supervised cooperative highway construction project and will be maintained by the state after construction. So the project was originally proposed under the Appalachian Regional Development Act of 1965, and it has reached various points in the project development process over the past several decades. In 2011, as regional studies were initiated, the NEPA studies were placed on hold. The project was restarted in 2015, at which time the project team engaged local officials, local government staff, agency representatives, and the public to develop and evaluate potential alternatives between Andrews and Stokoe. This group worked together to evaluate the number and type of lanes for the project, with the goal of finding a right-sized design that best addresses mobility and reliability needs while minimizing impacts and staying true to the goals of the Appalachian Development Highway System. These alternatives were presented at public meetings held in Andrews and Robbinsville in February 2019. The project team used feedback received at the public meetings to finalize the alternatives that would be studied during the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, environmental review process. The results of the NEPA studies were documented in an environmental assessment that is available for review on the project website. The environmental assessment details the planning and design process, anticipated impacts, and measures to avoid and minimize impacts to the human and natural environment. The environmental assessment documents the project team's ongoing coordination with agencies, local officials, and stakeholder groups. A number of environmental studies were conducted under the National Environmental Policy Act, which is a U.S. environmental law that promotes the enhancement of the environment. These studies include community impact assessment, indirect and cumulative effects report, a visual impact assessment, which relates to the view sheds in this beautiful area, natural resources technical report, a traffic noise report, air quality analysis, and cultural resource reports. A number of meetings between the public stakeholders, tribal representatives, local elected officials, and state and federal partners were conducted during development of this project. The meetings shown here were held between the project restart in 2015 and 2018. During 2019, all of these meetings were held. And just this year, all of these meetings were held. Now, out of all of those meetings, various potential improvement alternatives were developed and reviewed. For example, to offset impacts associated with widening NC 143 at the Appalachian Trail, the preferred alternative proposes a land bridge to provide safe passage for wildlife and pedestrians on the Appalachian Trail. A section of the Appalachian Trail would be realigned to cross that land bridge. The final location of the realigned Appalachian Trail is being developed in coordination with the U.S. Forest Service, National Park Service, and the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. The land bridge would be approximately 160 feet long, 220 feet wide, and 29 feet tall. The bridge deck, which is where you would normally walk or drive on a bridge, would be filled with earth material and planted. NCDOT will coordinate with the U.S. Forest Service and others to develop a planting plan for the land bridge. The preferred alternative also includes a 10-foot multi-use path, shown in this map on yellow, along the south side of NC 28 from Stocoa Road to Hydetown Road. Given the lack of sufficient Appalachian Development Highway System funding for the entire corridor, as well as input from the public, local officials, environmental advocacy groups, and agency representatives, alternatives between Andrews and Robbinsville, which were shown as alternatives T1 and T4 at the February 2019 public meetings, were removed from the current study. In Graham County, alternatives that included improvements to Five Point Road were dropped from further study due to a high number of business relocations and a lack of local support. Alternatives that included tunnels in the Stocoa Gap area were dropped from further study due to high environmental impacts, residential relocation, and high costs associated with tunnel construction, operation, and maintenance. On May 20, 2020, the NEPA 404 merger team reached concurrence on carrying the improved existing alternative, which is alternative 1, and no build alternative, which is a do nothing alternative, forward for detailed study. NCDOT has identified the improved existing alternative, alternative 1, as the preferred alternative. The preferred alternative would improve the existing alignments of US 129, NC 143, and NC 28 between US 129 south of Robbinsville and the existing 4-lane section of NC 28 in Stocoa. It will involve increasing shoulder widths and adding passing or climbing lanes for the length of the project. The no-build alternative was not selected as it would not meet the mobility and reliability needs of Graham County residents and therefore would not meet the project's purpose and need. In Graham County, we considered some alternatives on new location, but they were ultimately dropped. And this map shows those in the pink and the orange. They included improvements to 5 Point Road, as I mentioned earlier, among some others, the new locations which lacked local support. Now, NCDOT has identified the improved existing alternative as our preferred alternative. In order to accomplish this improvement of existing alignments, various typical roadway sections are proposed to meet the needs of parts of the corridor. These typical sections are shown as if you had a magic knife that you could slice through the roadway and turn it up like a piece of cake and look at the layers beneath. This is the typical section proposed for much of the project on NC 143 and NC 28. It includes two 12-foot lanes with 10-foot shoulders. There would be an 8-foot paved and 2 feet of grass section on this shoulder. Passing and climbing lanes would be included throughout the area. This typical section would be used on NC 28. It includes passing and climbing lanes and a multi-use path in Stocoa. This typical section will be used on NC 143 in Robbinsville, and it will include sidewalks from the Robbinsville High School entrance to the US 129 and 5 Point Road intersection. This typical section on NC 143 and the Stocoa Gap area includes climbing lanes in both directions and paved shoulders. This will provide safe passage for wildlife and pedestrians via the land bridge. The Appalachian Trail would be realigned over the proposed land bridge, and it will be covered with earth material and planted. And now we'll move to a quick overview of the maps. There are 6 maps for this project, and we will walk through just the highlights. Let's see if we can get those maps to play. Okay. So let's begin with map 1 and the beginning of the project, and we'll note just a few things on here for you. One is anywhere you see the red, you'll note that that is a concrete structure. It could be curb, gutter, it could be a drainage culvert. In this case, you'll see retaining walls. Anywhere you see the orange, there is existing pavement there, and we would be resurfacing that pavement. Where you see bright yellow, like you do up here by the Ingalls Market, that bright yellow is new pavement, and in this case it's the adding of a turn lane coming off of 129, making a right. Okay, as we move along, you'll see a number of retaining walls. These are used to help minimize the impacts created by the project. Where you see red and white, like you do here at Tallulah Creek, that's an existing concrete structure that would be retained. We would keep that. Okay, so we move down east of 5 Points Road. You'll see that we start adding pavement on each side of the roadway. We're adding those lanes and widening shoulders. Okay, we'll move down here, and at Old Sweetwater Road, you'll see that there is a stream crossing Sweetwater Creek here. The existing structure is being retained or kept, and you'll notice some new red, solid red here, which means that we are extending the ends of that culvert or structure to handle the water and appropriately handle it as we cross the highway. You'll notice there are areas where we switch from adding pavement on one side to both sides. The dark green that's shown in here is the existing NCDOT right-of-way. And this bright green is area where at the moment we believe that we will need to purchase right-of-way in order to complete this improvement of existing. You'll also see here some bright green with black crosshatching in it on both sides by Milt Williams Road. You'll see that. And what that is that's what we call a construction easement or a temporary easement. In other words, we would need that during the time of construction, but then it would revert back to the original owners. And you'll see in a number of cases, you'll see these little C's or F's up in these along these dotted lines. The C means that there's likely a hillside or something there that we're going to need to cut back into in order to minimize the effects of this project overall. And that would be right-of-way that we will need to acquire. Again, and you'll see in here, we're widening on both sides of the road, and then we go back to the south side. And as we move across. And at this point, this is what we're showing is, we refer to it as our worst case alternative because we do not have final designs yet, at which time we will try to minimize the impacts and bring these lines closer to the existing roadway or the new roadway to minimize the effects on people and property. And we'll move to map number 2. As we move along here, you'll notice that the majority of this widening is at this point is at one side, the north side. You'll see a new water handling structure being added here under the roadway. As we move up by Sleigh Bacon Road, you will see an existing structure to be retained, and we're making that a little longer. So we'll be adding to that. The roadway stays mainly to the north side of the road until we hit Queen Hollow Road, which is also England Bridge Road. And then we switch to the south side. There's a transition in there. And as we come over in here, you'll see a new water handling structure, probably a box culvert, but a water handling structure. You'll see this property in orange. Now, this orange is property that is, you'll see HPB, Historic Property Boundary, and the property itself is in orange. Now, the reason these are listed is not necessarily they are on the National Register of Historic Places, but they are at least eligible for listing. We mark those and try to stay off of them as much as possible. And here we have another, and the widening in this case is, this property is on the other side. You'll notice retaining walls again to help minimize effects. Same thing here, we have more retaining walls, an existing structure to be maintained. Same thing here, you'll see a number of retaining walls, and some of these you'll notice new pavement, like in the case of this driveway down here. All right. And as we move to map number 3, again, starting here, you'll notice that we are widening to both sides of the road. We are adding some retaining walls, those red lines, and another larger water handling facility. Could be a box culvert, but that's we're adding. Again, you'll see a large historic boundary here. There's quite a bit of historically eligible or listed properties here. And a roadway currently goes through that, and we would be widening it. Again, you'll see more retaining walls to minimize impacts. Again, we're still widening to both sides of the roadway. And then we're switching back in a short section around the curve there. Additional retaining walls. At Sweetwater Creek, there again, we have another water handling structure. There we go. We'll switch to map number 4. And you'll notice that a lot of this is very similar. We're widening to one side or the other, or in some cases to both, transitioning through from one to the other. Our retaining walls, and these maps are available online. You can download them. You could look at them online. You could visit the project website. You can also visit the division office. If you call, make an appointment, someone will be there to show these maps and the document to you. And there are quite a bit of retaining wall in here, where we're going to have to be doing some cuts back into the mountainside a little bit. And now we come down to where there will be the first large red thing you see is the retaining walls coming up to the land bridge. And this land bridge is the red that's crossing both sections of roadway, and then another retaining wall beyond it. You'll see the historic property boundary here in orange, and the Appalachian Trail, which is in purple. Now, as part of this proposal we talked about, would be a relocation of a portion of the Appalachian Trail to cross the land bridge, which is the area that we're looking at for this realignment is shown in blue. You'll see that light blue. Okay, I'm going to bring them somewhere in the neighborhood of the back of that retaining wall and down across the land bridge. Once you cross the land bridge, it would provide the opportunity to come back up, and I believe it's a parking and picnic area there. And then would tie back in further down. But that is currently being discussed. Okay. Here we have more retaining walls and widening to one side. And then as we work up, there's additional, as I said, this is worst case scenario. Things will be minimized as we go through final design. And now we're heading towards Stocoa, map number 5. All right, and we'll see here again as we come up and we tie in, working up this way, we're resurfacing a bit of pavement and adding one lane to, I guess we'd be looking now more of the east side. There is retaining wall, again the widening to one side, additional retaining walls. Here are 2 water handling structures being added in here near Martin Jenkins Road and Carver Branch Lane. Again, there are a number of retaining walls through here. Now, in this area of Bill Crisp Road, there would be a slight realignment of Bill Crisp Road. This gray with the cross-hatching through it shows pavement where it is today, but would be removed. And the realignment would bring it down and tie in across from Stocoa Road. It's much safer to do it that way. And then again, there's another water handling structure on the other side. Okay, as we move into map 6, you'll see here this is the area, you'll notice this yellow down here. This is the multi-use path that's being proposed in this area. Again, It's a small structure here by the Hooper home that would be retained. There's another one at the end of the retaining wall at Stocoa Creek, and again, we'd be retaining the part that's there now and extending it in either direction. There is another one, as you can see right here in the middle of the page, along with the retaining wall. And in the area of the Wolf Creek store, this is where we began to taper and tie back into existing. You'll see we're adding pavement on one side and just softening that curve, tying it back in. So that would be our maps. And again, those are available online and they're available at the division offices. So a little about the project cost estimate. Right-of-way is at roughly $14.8 million. Utility relocation is approximately $6.6 million. Overall construction of $104.2 million. Construction of the land bridge is about $5 million for a total of a little over $130, not quite $131 million. And it's important to note that these are estimates, and we will have better estimates as final designs are completed, but they are subject to change. Our schedule at this point, we anticipate the finding of no significant impact to be finished and signed in December of 2020. Right-of-way acquisition would begin at this point, anticipated September of 2021, so just about a year away. And construction is anticipated to begin in August of 2022. Now, all future dates are subject to change. A little bit about the project and the impacts. The project is roughly 12 miles in length. We're affecting no community facilities, no permanent park impacts, no churches impacted. There are 9 residential relocations, 5 business relocations, a little over 1 acre of wetlands, and there are 14 stream crossings with this project. And there are no known or potential hazardous waste sites. Historic properties and districts and archaeological sites may qualify for protection under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. In order to receive protection, properties must be listed on the U.S. Department of Interior's National Register of Historic Places or be deemed eligible for listing on the National Register. Section 4F of the U.S. Department of Transportation Act of 1966 gives special protection to public parks, recreational areas, wildlife and waterfowl refuges, and historic resources. Now, again, those are the ones that are either eligible for listing or actually listed on the National Register of Historic Places. NCDOT is aware of various significant sites along the project corridor. A programmatic agreement between the parties will be developed to include environmental commitments agreed upon to avoid adverse effects to the historic properties. And a programmatic agreement is a document that spells out the terms of a formal, legally binding agreement between a state DOT and other state or federal agencies and establishes a process for consultation, review, and compliance with one or more federal laws. The Federal Highway Administration and NCDOT provided public notice of a proposed de minimis or lack of adverse effect, de minimis impact determination under Section 4F for the project's potential effects on resources in the study area. The de minimis impact determination includes these homes and properties and the Cheoah Historic District and the Appalachian National Scenic Trail, the 4-lane section with the combined pedestrian and wildlife crossing bridge, which we call the land bridge, which is not only historic but a recreational property. Once decisions are made regarding the final design of the project, the limits of the project will be staked in the ground, and if you're an affected property owner, then a right-of-way agent will arrange a meeting with you to explain the plans, how it affects you and your rights as a property owner. If permanent right-of-way is acquired, then an appraisal will be completed and an offer will be made based on that appraisal. It's important to note that the appraisal is based on the highest and best use of that property at the time of appraisal. Now, NCDOT's policy is to contact affected property owners and conduct a property appraisal. Treat all owners and tenants equally. Fully explain the owner's rights. Provide fair market value for property, and provide relocation advisory assistance. If your business or residence is to be acquired as part of the project, additional assistance in the form of advice and compensation is available to you. After the virtual public hearing, there will be a 30-day comment period, which will close on October 30th, 2020. NCDOT and the Federal Highway Administration will then meet with local officials, government agency staff to review public comments. They'll also look at the public feedback and local perspectives, which will be discussed with the project team. The results of this coordination will be incorporated into a finding of no significant impact, the FONSI, which we anticipate to be signed are finalized in December of 2020, and then final design will begin after the public hearing, additional coordination with regulatory and resource agencies, and publication of the FONSI. At this point, right-of-way acquisition is anticipated to begin in September of 2021, and construction is expected to be phased in 3 sections beginning in August 2022. Here's information on your project team. We have Wanda Austin, who is our NCDOT project manager in Highway Division 14. Amy Sakharoff, who is our consultant project manager with Stantec. And Stacy Oberhausen, who's our consultant project manager from TGS Engineers. You may submit comments or questions at any time to this team by emailing robbinsville-stecoa@publicinput.com or calling the 984-205-6615 number and entering code 9893 when prompted. So I'm now going to open the floor for comments. Again, you could submit comments using the chat box. You can mail in the comment sheet. You can email comments to the project email. You can call in and leave a recorded comment to the number that we've shown a number of times here tonight, or directly through the project website. I'd like to encourage you to talk with your friends and family or anyone who did not attend tonight and get them to provide feedback. They can go to the website and view information on the project, and within a day or two, a recording of the presentation will be there as well. The handout's posted on the website and can be downloaded, and copies of the handout are also available at the division offices. We'd like you to send your comments back in and encourage your friends and neighbors to do the same. Once again, the comment period ends October 30th, 2020. And remember that we're seeking your comments on both the environmental document and the preferred alternative. And remember that October 30th date. So we'll now move into accepting the public comments via the chat box, etc. And we may answer questions tonight, or it may be that someone will get back to you if it's a particular question on your property itself. I would like to thank you for attending the virtual public hearing for State Transportation Improvement Program, project number A0009C, improvements to Corridor K between Robbinsville and Stocoa. Thank you and good evening.